There are some theories that talk about the idea that there maybe are multiple types of intelligence. Sternberg has one of these theories. He says that there's 3 different types of intelligence: the analytical, the creative, and the practical. With the analytical, this is going to be the ability to analyze, judge, evaluate, compare, and contrast. Creative, just how you would think, the ability to create, design, invent, originate, imagine, that's all going to be creative. And then practical intelligence, the ability to use, apply, implement, and to put ideas into practice. Children that have the high analytical ability, they tend to be favored in conventional schooling. So the idea that if you have an 8-year-old and they're very good at this analytical, as a teacher, you might gravitate towards that student and be like, this is a very smart student. If you have a creative student that's trying to come up with different possibilities, different answers to the questions, a teacher in that situation may not favor them, and they may actually punish that kid to a certain extent. They may be like, that's not the right answer. Here's the right answer. Don't try to be creative. Don't try to think outside of the box. Just regurgitate the answer that I gave to you. I'm not saying all teachers are like that, but according to the text, that is one of the possibilities. In Sternberg, that is one of the possibilities, that creative intelligence can be punished and that the analytical are favored. Sternberg also argued the idea that wisdom can be linked to this idea of practical intelligence, the ability to get things done. And when I think about it, we talked a little bit about self-regulation, self-control in the last couple chapters. I think it's going to be related to all of them, but I think that there's definitely a link to that in the practical type of intelligence, the ability to put things into action, to actually physically go out and do something. When we're talking about wisdom, academic intelligence is necessary, but according to Sternberg, but in many cases is insufficient requirement for wisdom. You need these other type of intelligence, like practical intelligence. Practical knowledge also about the realities of life is also needed. So you need to be able, again, to go out and live in the world and do things out there and learn from your mistakes. And so that's something you're going to get from practical type of intelligence. How Sternberg assesses what he calls wisdom is by presenting problems that require solutions, highlighting various intrapersonal, interpersonal, and contextual interests. Let's look at this another way. If you are running a company, which type of people would you like to hire? Would you like to hire people with the analytical, the creative, or the practical intelligence? If it was me, I would want to hire all of those types of people. I would want to have some that are analytical. I would want to have some that are creative. I would want to have some that are practical, that can actually get things done. So they are all definitely have a benefit, is the point of that. Another theory that talks about multiple types of intelligence is Gardner's Theory. And so he has several different ones here. We'll go through these quickly. The verbal skills, the ability to use language to express meaning. So the people that might be good at this one would be authors, journalists, public speakers. Mathematical skills is the second one. So engineers, scientists, accountants would use these. Spatial skills, the ability to think 3-dimensionally about objects. So architects, artists, they're going to use this. The body, kinesthetic skills, the ability to manipulate objects and be physically adept. So like surgeons, for example. But it's also about controlling your own body. So it could be for dancers and athletes as well. Musical skills, such as composers, musicians, etc. The intrapersonal skills, the ability to understand oneself and effectively direct one's life. So it's going to be like psychologists, theologians. That's the intrapersonal skills. The interpersonal skills, the ability to understand and interact with other people. So teachers, mental health professionals. And the last one is the naturalist skills, such as farmers and ecologists. Both Sternberg and Gardner's theories include one or more categories that's related to the understanding of one's self and others and getting along in the world. And so this idea is emotional intelligence. You may have heard of this. It emphasizes these interpersonal, the intrapersonal, and practical aspects. And so this emotional intelligence, the idea to perceive and express emotion accurately and adaptively, to be able to change if you need to based off of your past experiences and the people that you're dealing with, to understand emotion and emotional knowledge, to use feelings to facilitate thought, and to manage emotions in oneself and in others. I talked about self-control numerous times, and so this is one of the places, emotional intelligence, where this would definitely be adaptive as well. On interventions to improve emotional intelligence, they focus on how to regulate emotions, like I was just talking about with self-control. So you want to reduce angers and other negative emotions, and obviously you're going to want to reduce physical and verbal aggression. Those aren't going to get you very far. They talk about, the book does, for adolescents that have been cyberbullied, higher emotional intelligence can play a protective role. Some critics for emotional intelligence argue that it broadens the concept of intelligence too much. and that has not been adequately assessed and researched. So maybe it's not a type of intelligence, but it definitely has some type of merit to the idea of emotional intelligence. So maybe it needs a different term, emotional adaptability or something of that nature. Anyways, also, there are critics just in general on the idea of multiple intelligence. They argue that the research base to support them has not really been developed, and that the Gardner system here that we have seems arbitrary. So it's like, why isn't chess or prize fighter one of these different types of intelligence? Related to this, a number of psychologists continue to support the concept of what they call it G for general intelligence. So basically, if you're good in one area, if you have high intelligence, you're probably going to have high intelligence in a lot of the other areas. There's going to be a correlation there among maybe not all of these, but in a lot of these areas. So yes, back to Sternberg, for some people, they're going to be good in all three. And so there's going to be a very high correlation between their intelligence in one area and the other area. So it's possible. Although, and we'll talk a little bit about it later, the idea of being gifted. So you may be very good at music, but maybe you're not very good at any of the rest of them. It's possible. All right, in the next set of slides, we'll get into the neuroscience of intelligence.